Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez didn't just make a political misstep. She walked onto live national television and committed the most spectacular career-shattering miscalculation in modern congressional history. She looked Senator John Kennedy dead in the eyes and confidently called him a joke to his face. She was completely and utterly blind to the terrifying reality that the veteran lawmaker wasn't just sitting there. He was hunting. He had spent 30 grueling years in the political trenches, quietly managing billions of dollars and sharpening his instincts, waiting with the cold, absolute patience of an apex predator for someone exactly this loud and exactly this arrogant to mistake his slow Southern silence for sheer stupidity. For 2 hours and 13 agonizing minutes, the Senate Budget Committee hearing had been a bureaucratic graveyard. It was a coma-inducing deep dive into fiscal sustainability, a procedural wasteland so dry it normally only attracted C-SPAN insomniacs and bored staffers. The gallery was practically a ghost town. But then the committee Democrats played their ultimate wild card. They brought in Ocasio-Cortez to unveil her Green New Deal 2.0, a sweeping multi-trillion-dollar climate manifesto. It was a highly calculated, high-voltage tactical strike explicitly designed to hijack the Tuesday news cycle. The moment her name was called, the entire atmosphere of the room violently fractured. The oxygen vanished. The gallery surged to absolute capacity. CNN control rooms scrambled in panic to hijack their own feeds and broadcast live to the nation. Social media algorithms instantly caught fire with electric, volatile anticipation. Yet directly across the room, seated deep in his heavy mahogany chair, Senator John Kennedy did not move a single muscle. He was a statue in a tailored suit and a patterned tie, his reading glasses balanced precariously low on his nose. A pristine yellow legal pad lay open before him. Click, 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 his ballpoint pen tapped against the paper in a slow, hypnotic, terrifying rhythm. While the rest of the room vibrated with frantic energy, Kennedy methodically took his notes, displaying the chilling, unhurried focus of an executioner quietly inspecting the blade before the drop. For 8 uninterrupted minutes, Ocasio-Cortez delivered a flawless, weaponized rhetorical masterclass. Operating entirely without notes, she locked eyes with individual senators across the dais, bending the massive room to her absolute will. She weaponized climate data from sheer memory, her voice vibrating with a perfectly manufactured righteous fury as she painted apocalyptic nightmares of cities drowning in floodwaters, Phoenix suffocating in hellish heat, and California choked by crop-killing drought. With surgical precision, she tied every global catastrophe directly to the specific massive proposals in her framework. She was a political force of nature. The Democrats nodded in a synchronized trance. The Republicans sat frozen behind unreadable masks. But then exactly at the 8-minute mark, she made the fatal pivot that would irrevocably hijack the hearing and alter the entire trajectory of her career. She stopped addressing the committee and locked her crosshairs onto one solitary man. Her arm snapped forward like a whip, an accusing finger pointing dead at John Kennedy. "I want to speak directly to Senator Kennedy," she declared, her voice hardening into a weapon of pure contempt, "because I know exactly what is coming. I know he is sitting there right now thinking of some clever little folksy, focus group tested zinger that will play great on Fox News tonight." She delivered the line with total conviction, entirely convinced she had just fired the kill shot. She had absolutely no idea she had just handed him the loaded gun. Kennedy did not flinch. He merely looked up from his yellow legal pad with an expression of mild, detached interest, reacting with the casual nonchalance of someone who has just faintly heard their name paged across a crowded restaurant. Ocasio-Cortez leaned closer to her microphone, her voice hardening into a weaponized reprimand. "Senator, with all due respect, you are the very reason this institution is broken. You have been in government for 30 years. State Treasurer, United States Senator, 3 decades of power. And what exactly is your legacy? A collection of one-liners, a greatest hits album of empty sound bites. You are not a legislator, Senator. You are a late-night comedian with a gavel." Having delivered the opening strike, she turned back to aggressively address the full stunned room, her voice rising with the practiced dramatic crescendo of someone who has rehearsed this exact confrontation in the mirror 100 times over. While the planet literally burns around us, while working families cannot afford life-saving insulin, while American children go hungry in their beds, this man sits in the most powerful legislative body in the history of the world and crafts jokes. The American people do not need his Saturday Night Live routine. They need substance. They need actual policy. They need leaders who take the future of humanity seriously instead of treating the United States Senate like an open mic night at a cheap comedy club. Savoring the moment, she looked back at Kennedy, her eyes narrowed into dark slits of absolute contempt. Your time cracking jokes while Rome burns is officially over, Senator. The next generation is sitting right here, and I promise you, we are not laughing. She sat back in her chair with the heavy, definitive force of a period striking the end of a sentence. A sudden, defiant ripple of applause erupted from the progressive activist organizations seated in the gallery. Down on the staff bench, one young Democratic aide leaned over to another, whispering something that produced a wide, satisfied smirk. On social media, the hashtag #Kennedy began to trend globally within 90 seconds. Through all of this triumphant noise, Senator Kennedy did absolutely nothing. He did not scowl, interrupt, or bristle. He sat precisely as he had been sitting before the attack began. Reading glasses resting on his nose, yellow legal pad open, pen held loosely in his right hand. If anything, the rigid lines of his face had softened slightly during her blistering tirade, displaying the quiet, almost serene expression a person adopts when watching an opponent confirm a deeply held suspicion they have harbored for a very long time. When the gallery's applause finally faded into an uncomfortable, expectant silence, Chairman Lindsey Graham leaned toward his microphone. Senator Kennedy, you have been referenced directly by the witness. Would you like to respond during your allotted questioning time? Kennedy moved with agonizing, deliberate slowness. He reached for his water glass, took a measured sip, and set the glass back down without making a sound. He slowly removed his reading glasses, pulled out his patterned tie, and began carefully polishing the lenses, taking approximately 6 excruciating seconds to complete a task that required no more than 2. John Kennedy understood a fundamental law of political combat that his younger counterpart had yet to learn. Absolute silence in the immediate aftermath of a vicious attack is infinitely more devastating than any rushed defensive rebuttal. Once the lenses were spotless, he placed the glasses back onto his face, looked directly back at Ocasio-Cortez, and smiled. It was not a broad theatrical grin or a smug smirk. It was the small, private, terrifying smile of a predator who has just been handed the exact keys to the cage he wanted. Mr. Chairman, Kennedy replied, his Louisiana drawl thick, unhurried, and entirely unchanged from the way his father and grandfather had spoken before him. I surely would. He turned his gaze entirely to the Congresswoman. Representative, that was deeply entertaining. I mean that sincerely. You've got real, undeniable talent. Your delivery is absolutely first rate. It actually reminds me of my neighbor Budrow's daughter. She comes down for Thanksgiving dinner every single year with big elaborate plans for exactly how we ought to be running the family ranch. Never actually fed a chicken in her life. Never mucked out a stall. Never balanced the heavy books on a volatile livestock operation. But Lord Almighty, she has got plans. Color-coded binders and everything. A quiet, involuntary laugh rippled through the Republican side of the dais, catching even one seasoned Democratic senator off guard. Kennedy's tone remained remarkably conversational, entirely devoid of venom. Now, Representative, you just spent 2 solid minutes calling me a comedian to my face. You sat there and confidently told the world that I have absolutely no substance, that I am nothing but cheap jokes and empty policy. I want to test that theory today. He calmly reached down and flipped the heavy page of his yellow legal pad, revealing a fresh sheet covered completely in small, precise, impeccably structured handwriting. I have got 5 specific lessons I would like to walk through with you today, Representative. And I do not offer these as insults. I offer them as lessons. Because you boldly stated that you want substance, and I am going to give you more raw, unfiltered substance in the next 20 minutes than you have received in your entire 6 years walking the halls of Congress. Lesson 1, how math actually works. Kennedy looked at her sharply over the rims of his glasses. Representative, you just spent 10 minutes passionately presenting the Green New Deal as an investment, completely rejecting the word cost. You suggested that anyone who opposes your plan is choosing corporate profit over the survival of the planet. He set aside the soaring rhetoric and looked directly at the math. I managed $20 billion of other people's hard-earned money for 16 straight years as state treasurer of Louisiana. The one universal truth I learned is that the only difference between a brilliant idea and a bankrupt idea is usually a standard calculator. He asked the simple question she could not escape: how much does the Green New Deal actually cost? Ocasio-Cortez leaned forward, her political reflexes kicking in, but Kennedy cut through cleanly. Your own office has published the number. What is it? Her shoulders visibly tightened. Approximately 93 trillion, she answered, the words clipped and defensive. Kennedy repeated the figure with the grim, emotionless clarity of an oncologist reading a terminal chart. $93 trillion over 10 years. That is not my number. That is the exact mathematical number from your own proposals. He did the division live on camera. Divided by 330 million Americans, that comes to roughly $281,000 per person. For a family of four, $1.10 million in new financial burden. The median household income in this country is about $75,000 a year. You are asking the average American family to absorb a burden 14 times their total annual income. Kennedy set the pen down. The quiet click echoed through the microphones. I manage teachers' pensions, firefighters' pensions, the retirement accounts of frontline nurses. If I had proposed something that cost people 14 times their salary without explaining how to fund it, they would have had security escort me out before lunch. Ocasio-Cortez tried to pivot to the cost of inaction. Kennedy interrupted with eerie patience. That is a very fine bumper sticker, Representative, but bumper stickers do not balance federal budgets. He leaned forward, eyes locking onto hers with devastating clarity. Your Green New Deal is Boudreaux's imaginary catfish farm, a beautiful sweeping vision wrapped in a color-coded binder. But the second someone pulls out a calculator, you change the subject to the weather. Lesson 2, how money actually works, specifically your money. Kennedy produced documents from the House Ethics Committee. He detailed the Met Gala, the tax the rich dress, the $35,000 ticket, the free admission secured for her fiancé by creatively listing him as a spouse while omitting him on financial disclosure forms. He laid out the $1 million moved through shell companies by her former chief of staff and the $20,000 paid to a ketamine specialized psychiatrist listed as leadership training. You marched in here wearing tax the rich like a holy vestment, Kennedy said, yet your own record shows you cannot even legally manage your own campaign's tiny checkbook. Lesson 3, how blinding hypocrisy actually works. Kennedy paid her a genuine compliment on building a massive brand, then dismantled it. He listed the $50,000 luxury resort spending while telling children to skip meat, the private Ubers while championing public transit, the first-class flights while preaching rail, and the $14,000 designer outfit for a Vanity Fair shoot, an amount equal to 4 months' salary for a home health aide in her own district. A millionaire politician wearing a tax-the-rich dress to a $35,000 cocktail party is by definition a spectacular joke, he said. Not because you are stupid, but because the contradiction is so enormous that bitter laughter is the only sane human reaction. Lesson 4, how actual government works. Kennedy contrasted his 30 years of real governance, managing $20 billion pension funds that outperformed benchmarks, securing disaster relief, passing legislation, with her record, 0 standalone bills passed into law, even during the 117th Congress when Democrats held total control. Her Green New Deal received 0 Senate votes. You possess 36 million Instagram followers and exactly 0 federal laws with your name on them, he said. When my career ends, retired teachers in Louisiana will still cash secure pension checks. When yours ends, people will have 1 billion digital screenshots. Lesson 5, the story you sold America. Kennedy exposed the carefully curated origin story. Born in the Bronx but moved at age 5 to wealthy Westchester County, father a successful architect, elite schools, Boston University costing $40,000 a year. You aggressively tell the cameras about the gritty Bronx because a comfortable girl from Westchester does not fit the lucrative revolutionary brand you are selling. He closed his yellow legal pad. I am an old man. Tearing someone down without offering something constructive is petty. So here is your homework assignment. He told her to go to the real Bronx, sit at cramped kitchen tables with families making $40,000 a year, and explain without filters or teleprompters how $93 trillion would help them pay rent. Explain the luxury spending while they agonize over groceries. Explain why her dress costs more than their used car. Chairman Lindsey Graham, looking stunned, asked if she wanted to respond. Ocasio-Cortez leaned toward the microphone. What came out was broken, searching, collapsing. Every rhetorical path led straight into the steel traps Kennedy had already set. For 8 excruciating seconds, an eternity for the woman who had never been silent on camera, she stood completely wordless. Kennedy watched her search the empty air. There is absolutely no rush, Representative. When you figure out the mathematical answer, I will be down in Louisiana eating gumbo, not at a luxury beach resort. He stood up, gathered his legal pad, pen, and folder. I yield back what is left of my time, which, unlike the Green New Deal, I actually managed not to waste. He turned and walked out of the hearing room. The political shockwaves detonated before the heavy wooden doors had even closed behind him. 6 devastating clips went violently viral. The $281,000 per person math, the catfish farm analogy, the ethics discrepancies, the zero bill statistic, the shampoo bottle callback, and above all, the 8 seconds of total silence from the one woman who had never been silent in her privileged life. The real-world impact was catastrophic. Her small-dollar fundraising saw its first significant sustained decline. Genuine grassroots doubt began to spread. Deep in the real Bronx, a tired 54-year-old home health aide named Maria Gutierrez, who had voted for her 4 times, watched the clip and whispered, I just want her to actually come sit in my tiny kitchen and show me the calculator. 1,000 miles away, a government teacher showed the full hearing to his class and concluded, if you cannot show your work on the paper, the teacher will always know you are faking. Senator Kennedy was the master teacher. Representative Ocasio-Cortez did not show her work. And so the fallout relentlessly continues to ripple through the American political landscape, proving exactly what happens when empty focus group slogans violently collide with a man armed with 30 years of verified receipts. This was not just a hearing. This was a legend meeting reality, and reality won. The myth has been shattered, and once shattered, it can never be fully rebuilt.